Hello Dragon Ball players, I'm Legends Michael Carrick with Team Foe/PPG and I'm here to bring you another deck profile of Trunks the Envoy of Justice from this weekend's PPG Webcam Invitational number 4, in which I got top 4. Let's jump right into the deck profile. Once again, I played Trunks/Trunks SS2 Trunks Envoy of Justice. His permanent on both sides is during your opponent's turn, if you would add a card from your life to your hand or place it in your drop area, you may reveal it and add it to your hand instead. This, of course, allows us to prevent getting crit, and it allows us to trigger what I call shield triggers in the deck. When I say shield triggers or life triggers, I mean cards that gain an effect once they trigger off of your Trunks' reveal effect, giving you bonus effects. It's a term I learned from, I think, like Duel Monsters back in the day. And then on the front and back side, he has this ability, when this card attacks, draw one card. Very simple. His awakening condition is quite unique. When your life or your opponent's life is at 4 or less, you may draw one card, then switch up to one of your energy to active mode and flip this card over. Well, now this awakening condition allows us to punish a lot of decks that like to go to 4 early on their own. Oftentimes we can awaken on turn 2 with like 6 or 7 life still, and then we're 15k and we're making the game a lot harder for opponents. On the backside, in addition to that permanent and that auto that I mentioned earlier, he gains a new ability. He gains an activate main, once per turn, 2 mono blue energy, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, no other requirements, and place it at the bottom of its owner's deck, and then at the end of the turn switch up to one of your mono blue energy back to active mode. So for blue, a long-time problem with blue was lack of removal, lack of permanent removal. This leader comes with his own form of bottom deck removal, which is amazing. It doesn't even put it in the drop for them to reuse or banish later. This just gets it out of the game effectively until they have to shuffle and redraw their cards. Let's launch right into the deck profile. We're going to start with our shield triggers I had mentioned earlier. So the mana triggers, or what I call my mana dork shield triggers, come up first. We play 4 Vegeta and 3 Goku. This is merely to balance out the number of Vegetas and Gokus for Union Potara later in the deck. But either of these cards, when they're revealed from your life and added to your hand or sent to the drop, you can reveal them with your leader effect, and they'll go to your energy instead, and you'll get to draw a card. And then at the end of your next turn, they'll go to the drop. So this gives you a temporary floating energy to use next turn, pretty willy-nilly, and lets you speed up the game to your pace and hit your curve a lot easier. And then to round out our life/shield triggers, we play 4 Trunks Never-Ending Justice. Trunks Never-Ending Justice, when he gets shield triggered, he plays onto the field, becomes a blocker, and is a 15k, so he can attack if you need him to. And then he also allows to return up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards to their hand, creating a really cool defensive technique when you need it. We play a total of 11 shield triggers. I did used to only play 3 Goku and 3 Vegeta, but I started to realize that it was super hard to get that consistent turn 1 when you only play 3 of 3 and 1 of the 4, and you really want to see this earlier in the game than you want to see that. And then a way to trigger our shield trigger, we have Trunks Power to Save the Future. When this card is played, it becomes a blocker, and it lets you play up to 2 blue battle cards face up into your life. So you generally want to take any of these two of any of these shield triggers and put them face up in your life, and then essentially draw 2 cards from your life back to your hand. So it lets you draw your face down life to your hand, and effectively lets you see every single card in your deck during a game, over the course of the game. And then we have our new powerhouse of the deck. We have Tapion, Savior from Another Time. This card was the perfect card for this deck. It is a 2 specified cost Unison, so it comes down to making God's Healing Technique live. And then its auto is when you play this card, as long as you are a Trunks leader. All of these cards need Trunks leaders to really be effective, which is why we're playing this leader, in addition to his removal capabilities. When you play this card, you can add a card from your life to your hand. Amazing already, and then you may place any card from your hand back into your life. So ideally a shield trigger, of course, just like this Trunks, giving us more consistency in the deck. Or if you have extra Tapions, you have nothing to do with them, or a dead card that you just won't use for a while, you can put that in your life and let that be the life you die on, meaning the last life you'll take in a game. And then his +1 auto is incredible. He cannot +1 on your turn, but that's fine. He +1 when your opponent attacks. You can choose up to 1 blue future Trunks in your hand with an energy cost of 2 or less, so this counts, and play it to the field. Unbelievable +1. Even if you negate the attack, he still gets this +1. Even they attack this Unison trying to shut down God's Healing, you get the +1 when he goes back to 2 and God's Healing is still alive. And if you combo it with this Trunks, you get to play a blocker on your opponent's turn, which also fixes your hand. Unbelievable synergy. His -2, as long as you have 3 life or more, you can use his -2. You'll get to -2 on your activate main. Choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards. No other requirements. And then absorb it under this card, effectively removing it from the field, giving blue even more board removal. Something blue is just dying for. Excellent card for the deck. And to round out our starter package, we have our My Bulwark of the Future. When Mai is played, she is a 1-drop. She looks at the top 5 of your deck for any Trunks Future card, no other cost requirements, or a 2 cost specified Unison. It's like she was built to find this Tapion, or rather, the Tapion was built to be foundable by her. And it's beautiful because she has 20 search targets in this deck. You'll see the other 8 search targets as I go through them later. So let's talk about mulligans real quick with the deck. When we talk about mulligans, we want to see these 3 cards in an opening hand. This card is great in the early mulligan if you have 2 shield triggers to go with it. This card's great in the mulligan because you know you're going to want to play it on turn 2. This card's great in the mulligan in case you can't play this turn 1 because you're missing shield triggers. This can find you a shield trigger and or can find you your Unison. Unbelievable card in this deck. Oh, and then now we're going to talk about some of our setup cards. We have 4 Zeno Edge of Space. I know it is our super combo as well, and you're like, well, why is our super combo our setup card? Well, as you'll notice as I go through some of these cards, we have a lot of 1-cost cards in this deck. A lot of times, since we're ramping so hard and we're trying to do minimal things with our energy, we're going to want to play a lot of 1-cost cards to fill up our time. And all of these cards get a lot of value when they play. Their effects are really useful. This card effectively draws 2. This card replaces itself. This card replaces itself and becomes a super combo later. So this combo paired with this card. Let's say your opponent triggers one of your shield triggers. Like they hit you and you get to put one of these in your energy, right? And you draw a card. You can use your Zeno once you're at 5 life or less to pick up one of your shield trigger temporary energies, put it back down in active mode, and now it becomes a permanent energy. So you've effectively ramped for the combo of taking a damage and using a super combo. Super cool. Then our next setup card and final setup card will be Son Goku the Boundless, or what I call the Goku Mini Objection. This for 1 energy allows you to pick up one of your energy in your energy area to your hand, and then place the top card of your deck in your energy and rest mode. Right, so it doesn't actually give you extra energy to play with it for the turn. However, if you pick up one of your temporary energy to your hand, the energy that comes in from your deck is now permanent, and you've effectively ramped. And now he's a 1-drop 5k that can attack like the Gotenks Unison from the VJX deck. He can also be Union Petard with later. Super great card. Moving away from our setup, so quick review. This is our opening mulligan. This is decent to keep in your opening hand if you already have your Power of the Future. These cards you do not want to keep in your opening hand, but you definitely want to see them earlier in the game. And we'll go on to our protection. So in our protection, we have 2 Vegeta Warriors that cross time. It does have a unique marker, and on your opponent's turn, it's a 1 energy negate attack. Play this card. Amazing effect for this deck. The fact that it's a unique is why we only play it 2. You negate the first attack with it. You want to attack with it for 15k on your turn, and then hopefully Union Potara it away with a Goku on your field or in your energy. Excellent card. We used to play this card at 3 or 4, but now we realize it gets really bricky at 3 or 4, so we just took it down. And this is the reason why we have this Vegeta at 4, so that we have more Vegeta targets to fuse with if we need to. Next up in our protection slot, we have 4 copies of God Sealing Technique. This is probably the only card I was unhappy with all day. I see this card way too often. Of course, it is searchable by Mai, so that is why we kept it at 4. Sometimes I feel like playing a 4th Mai instead of a 4th God Sealing Technique. So if you only own 3 God Sealings, it's definitely still worth playing this deck with only 3 Mais. It is a searchable name by Mai. It is not playable by Tapion, but it can be an extra 15k beater in those matches where you just need to push faster. And then a huge update from my last list. We're now playing 4 SS2 Trunks Heroic Prospects. In my last video, I talked about how it was so difficult to play multiple copies of this card in a game. However, with the introduction of Tapion Savior from Another Time, we can play this card on 2. You tap 2 out for Tapion, right? His +1 allows you to play any Trunks on your opponent's turn that costs 2 or less. This card is only a 1 cost on your opponent's turn. So of course you don't get the counter attack effect of the card, but you get the auto effect, which essentially shuts down decks like Red Broly and Dark Broly from fighting back in the early game, unless they want to save or use up their entire hand. Also, it becomes a 15k attacker, and of course, it's searchable by Mai. And this rounds out your 20 card searchable package by Mai. So now we've seen all the early game and the protection, we can talk about some of our mid-game strategies. So this addition to the deck is definitely shout out to Trey Faircloth. He has been running this deck from the beginning. I think Trunks is his favorite character of all time. So, and when he put this in his deck, I was mind blown by the capabilities it offers. We play so many one drops in this deck and cards that we play on our opponent's turn that it's easy to get 4 battle cards onto the field. Energetic uh, Energetic Frenzy Kefla is a 7-drop blue battle card that reduces by 1 in your hand for every blue battle card on the field, and down to a minimum of 3 blue pips. That means we can cast it for 3 energy on our turn. Her activate main is unbelievable. It's once per turn you may draw 2 cards, and at the start of your opponent's main phase you untap 2 energy, allowing you to hold up protection for cards like this. The draw 2 in itself is insane. She's a 25k. She's not easy to just attack and remove. I love this card. The only downside to this card is it's a 1 for 10k combo, so in that sense it sometimes gets clunky in this deck. But this is your way of turning the corner as a blue deck. And then our other mid-game package is our Super Saiyan Blue Vegito Soaring Blow. It's a 5-drop Unipatara with a Son Goku or a Vegeta. It can also Unipatara from your field and your energy. So if you have energy that's going to flow away or just need to use something, here's a 0 energy 20k attacker that comes down, and when it's played, it bottom decks 2 of your opponent's battle cards. That's insane to me. No other restrictions. So now your deck has Tapion as a removal, it has Vegito as a removal, and has their leader as a removal. That's so much removal for blue. Additionally, if it were to be counterplayed by God Sealing, Union Patara doesn't stack these cards as a cost, so if it constantly goes back in your hand, you just restack them over on top of these cards. And then afterwards, we have Super Saiyan Blue Vegito Paralyzing Prowess. Under Paralyzing Prowess is our endgame card. This allows us to evolve over Super Saiyan Blue Vegito Soaring Blow for 4 mono blue energy. It comes down with Deflect and Barrier, so it's uninteractable by most cards in this game, and it's a triple striker, a great finisher or a great way to remove Unisons. When it's played and when it attacks, your opponent has to bottom deck 2 cards from their hands. What a great, and that is not a once per turn, so on the turn it's coming down and it gets to attack, it deals 4 hand damage effectively your opponent's hand. If you can't kill your opponent with this card, I suggest removing one of your opponent's battle cards or one of their Unisons from the field just to maintain board control. This is otherwise known as our finisher. If you see this card early, it's safe to charge either of these earlies because we can't play them until like 4 or 5 energy in the game. And then finally we have our SCR, Baby Hachiyak, Saiyan Destroyer. Saiyan Destroyer is a card that can be played for free by discarding 1 card from your hand as long as you have 3 or more energy. While you have 3 or more energy, he comes down, negates the attack, and your opponent can't attack for the rest of the turn. Now, with this deck, you get to 3 energy so quickly within the first 2 turns of the game since you have all these ramp cards. Even though they're temporary energy, they count as energy, so you can play this in case your opponent is trying to aggro you out of the game as fast as they can. This is the main deck I played for today. It is 50 cards. I would only really play 50 cards ever in any deck. I do enjoy the consistency that 50 cards offers. If you have any thoughts or updates or changes you'd like to suggest to the deck, I definitely welcome them. Bandai did release a very confusing ruling saying that if you were to reveal these cards, if they're face up in your life and you try to reveal them, it's not considered revealed, so you don't get their effect. But that's really only to stop turtles. They revealed a second ruling that allowed it so that if your leader's effect is, even if they're face up in your life and you take damage and use your leader's effect to re-reveal them, you get their effects and they go to your energy. So that ruling is gone, so definitely can build this deck without any fear of that, and definitely enjoy and tell me what you guys think about it. So we're going to go into the side deck for this event. This side deck is very meta relevant. Do take that in mind. Side decks should be meta specific. They should fit your locals. If you're only a local player, if you are traveling to a main event, maybe a side deck like this is something you're looking for. I'm going to start off with side deck cards I definitely would not play again in the future. A Vegeta Warrior that crossed time, I talked about the fact that it's super clunky at more copies of 2, so I will not be playing this card again. I thought I'd be putting in versus red decks or Reboot Gohan, but it's unique, so you can't really negate again with it, and red decks have that Piccolo Unison that punishes you for playing counterattacks. Actually, if you counterattack with this while they have that Unison out, they'll just blow up this Vegeta, and it's pointless for 1 energy. Baby Golden Avenger was intended to beat Blue Baby and was intended to beat Invoker. This matchup has a natural matchup versus Baby. If you're interested in discussing that versus Blue Baby, definitely message me on Facebook or message me somehow and we can talk about why I think that matchup's so great. So we definitely did not need this card. And versus Invoker, this card is unplayable anyway because whether we're going first or second, there is no way you're going to get to resolve this card versus Invoker with just paying 5 energy. Now onto the cards that actually would side again in the future. Son Goku striving to be the best is definitely a great card for those decks that like to strike low to the ground, such as like Paper Cuts of Hell VJX, the 1-drop VJX, or the like Gogeta Xeno deck. Once they play all those 1-drops that can attack, this prevents that from attacking. It has barriers, so it is difficult to remove, and it prevents launches like Green Red Piccolo Alliance card from attacking. Really great card. Would side again, it's within the color. We have one copy of Fu, the Dark Banisher. This is mainly in there to beat out Dark Broly and launch. On turn 4, when you have a wide board and whenever you're ready to go in for the kill, it's an over round 4, and permanent says every time your opponent tries to use an ability or a skill, they must pay another card by warping it out of their hand. So every time Dark Broly wants to combo with one of their cards using their leader skill, they have to warp an extra card. Every time Launch wants to draw for a combo, she has to warp an extra card. She wants to flip to a different side, gotta warp an extra card. Excellent card versus those decks. We play an extra copy of Super Saiyan Blue Vegito Soaring Blow versus those decks that go very wide, very quickly, and versus decks you just desperately need it against, such as Red Broly. If you have 4 of these in your deck, it makes it so hard for Red Broly to maintain a field. You're just wiping away their stuff for free, and if they try to replay stuff, they have to discard a card to replay stuff, and then you're just wiping it away with your other removals, such as Tapion, your leader. An excellent card. I'd definitely play at 4 if the format was faster. I played 2 copies of Dimension Magic. Dimension Magic is definitely not a card that found a spot in the main because we can't do anything with our energy on our opponent's turn. We don't play a rival. We don't play enough like actual opponent's turn negates or counterplays that use energy. So there's no reason to have 2 untapped energy on our opponent's turn. However, D-Magic does come in versus decks like Reboot Gohan where you need the extra energy, or versus Invoker when you need to have an extra card negate versus Apex of Power. The fact that it can Sparking has a neat interaction with your leader because you can Sparking one of the life triggers and that life trigger will still trigger. We have 2 copies of God Slicing Black Kamehameha, one of the coolest looking cards in this game. This is a great card versus Red Broly. It bottom decks their 3 or 4 drop when they try to play it, interrupting their chain. Ideally, the 4 drop said they had to pay an energy, and then you get to draw a card. Usually, you want to pay the 2 energy for this card in this deck so that you don't have to lose hand count. You maintain hand count, but you can if you want to just pay. Instead of paying the energy cost, you can sacrifice 2 cards from your hand to do this effect. And of course, you will replace one of those cards by drawing a card, but that's definitely not as good as just paying 2 energy, interrupting the chain. And this deck definitely has a lot of extra energy to play with versus those decks. It's also good versus Invoker. It can bottom deck the Rival Seeker as it comes in. It has other niche uses versus other decks. Definitely suggest you pick up a pair of these and start playing around with it. We have 2 copies of Protector of the People for the King Piccolo deck that just came out, and VJX. Any deck that really goes wide with 15Ks, I mean Ginyu if you really had to think about it. Of course, the 5K every time a battle card attacks just effectively shuts off a lot of people's turns. For decks where Heroic Prospects is not good, this card is good. They're pretty much interchangeable. Obviously, the reason we're playing Heroic Prospects in the main is because it's a Trunks Future card and it's blue, so it synergizes our deck a lot better. And finally, we're playing 2 copies of Super Saiyan 2 Trunks for Brighter Future in the side deck. It's definitely not in the main because a lot of decks in today's format can remove this card easily. Of course, decks like, just off the top of my head, like Launch, Invoker, Dark Broly, all can remove this card for free. Green decks can remove this card. So it really only comes in versus like Red Broly or Baby, and you don't ever want to cast it on your turn. So it's a 4 energy blue Future Trunks, obviously synergistic, and even more synergistic on your opponent. If you have a blue Unison in play, it costs 2. So your Tapion can play it for free on your opponent's turn. At the end of each of your opponent's turn, it draws an extra card. It is unique, so you can only have 1 in the field. And its activate battle allows you to, for 2 blue energy, give it 10k more power and triple strike, becoming an early game threat versus decks like Red Broly or Invoker, and allowing you to maintain a bit of hand advantage in a deck that doesn't really draw again until Kefla slams down into the field. So these are, it also gives you really cool out versus hand control. Of course, hand control struggles to beat us already because we can't get crit in our life. We don't take crit damage, but just drawing extra cards versus hand control while they're trying to take cards out of our hands always impedes their victory. So I would definitely suggest playing two of these again in the future. I completely took Omni out of my deck because cards like Secret Identity, Black Saint, and Dormant Potential Unleash definitely ruin